Hyper's Carbon X29, carbon fiber mountain biking from Walmart for under $700. But this isn't a standard Carbon X29, this is Project X29, which means fully upgraded. The goal, make a truly trail-capable mountain bike while still keeping an eye on budget, upgrading as I can afford, in this case, over 2 years of budgeting. When I make project bikes, sometimes I'm asked, is there even anything left of the original bike? Well, I'm going to start this build out by showing you what's left of the original bike. There's the saddle, if for no other reason than I like the green stitching that matches the frame, and also I like the snafu branding. Seat post clamp and seat post, those are both factory parts. The stem, it's original too, along with the headset hiding under it. Sealed bearings from the factory. And of course the frame, the carbon fiber frame, legit carbon, made to the same standards as some of the big brand carbon frames over in Europe. This though, the 2-year-old variant, there is an updated model with slightly better geometry specs and a few other perks. That's why it's taken me so long to get around to this. I wasn't thrilled with the steep head tube angle. I'll talk more about why I even started this in a few minutes, but obviously it's upgraded, so let's get to the upgrades first. And the first of the first is up top, where I swapped out everything but the stem. New grips, silicone foam, new bars, mountain bike sport bars, 780 millimeters wide originally, but I trimmed them down to 740. Everyone has a sweet spot, and that can vary from bike to bike, and on this bike it seemed like 740 was going to be it for me, so let's hope that works out. Brakes now hydraulic, Shimano MT200 hydraulics. Resting beside the brake lever on the right is the new shifter. It's a SRAM NX 11-speed, a well-proven shift experience. Paired with the new width and the ergonomics up top, it's all looking good and color matching too. The new fork, I've used these many times. It's not the fork I initially intended for this project that got co-opted for something else. This is my second choice. Probably among the best bang per buck air forks available in my opinion. This particular model features a remote lockout that I opted not to install. It has larger stanchions and is lighter weight than the factory fork, and 120 millimeters of travel, up from the puny 60-ish that the bike came with. Fork travel and fork weight, two important things when trying to replace the factory product. The Apixon is very well spec'd for its price, and it also has a rebound adjuster. That and the fact that it's an air fork means it's adequately tunable. Quick release for both wheels. Wheels I purchased from the local bike shop since they were the same price as some of the budget offerings, the limited ones, available these days. Bontrager, a brand I trust. These are connection alloy wheels. Decent hubs, 20mm rims, pressed valves, they're lightweight, and they match the Bontrager tires. Also not my first choice, but a decision born out of curiosity. I wanted to see how much better the lowest level Bontrager tires are than what came on the factory, even though these are only 29 by 2.0, definitely thinner. The tread not super aggressive, but the knobs, they are deeper. My thought process here is even though they're thinner, the thicker tread and the fact that they're Bontrager should be an improvement, even if they were my second selection. Note, there's room for tires up to 2.35 inches with this frame. And I do have to admit, I like the parity. Bontrager on Bontrager, and another benefit of the Bontrager wheels is the free hub. So this bike can be equipped with a new cassette, a cassette of my choice. For the group set, I went with SRAM NX. These were my go-to selections 3 or 4 years ago, and they've been arguably outpaced by other offerings, but they're still solid performers. I already had this new old stock derailleur, so adding a shifter and a cassette to that, to have a kit to equip on this bike just made sense. When it came to the cassette though, I got both curious and cheap. A factory 11-speed SRAM with a 42-tooth low gear had a cost of $60. I bought this aftermarket 46-tooth for $47. More range should be good. The trade-off, it's silver and it weighs about 8 ounces more than the SRAM equivalent. Unfortunately, the frame still says 9-speed. I guess I could tape over that maybe. The front half of the drivetrain, a fallback to what works and is affordable. It's hard to beat the IXF crankset. A Hollowtech 2 clone, lightweight, durable, affordable, $59 or less gets you one of these with 170mm crank arms, often bundled with the snail chainring like this 30-tooth. The kits also include an external bearing bottom bracket, more weight savings and super performance, all for a kit with a very low price. Oh, and add a fifth part to what's left from the factory. I see the Falcon Saker chain guide there. For pedals, I had some green race-faced Chesters, but a second guessed my way into a stored set of Ezra pedals. I discovered this brand years ago, then they went away. Fortunately, I had this extra set. I call them better than Ezra's. They're good pedals, and of course it doesn't take much to be better than the factory pedals. Traction is the goal. I won't go over all the frame details, I have other videos for that, but I will tell you that aside from the steep head tube angle on this version 1, people that buy the new ones get the version 2 with better geometry, but aside from this version 1 Geo, it's a nice looking frame. Well, at least to me, not everyone likes this color green, but I chose to highlight it with my grips, to each their own. I don't think I've shown this yet, but here's the other half of the brakes, rotors 160mm front and rear, and of course calipers, hydraulic Shimano MT200s, front and rear. And that's the equipped parts rundown for Project X29. Lots of new that should drastically change the ride, but there's only one way to find out, and that's on the trail, where, okay, now I intended this to be a one ride and then strip it built. This entire video was really a setup for something else, or at least it was. But I gotta say, the intro climb is always telling to me because I detest climbs, really. Anything I don't like about a bike is going to show up on a climb because I'm already in a bad mood, especially after weeks of e-biking. But you know, a SRAM NX 11 speed with a 30 to 46 tooth pairing, well, that's not bad at all for climbing. And bonus, with the new pedals, I'm not slipping around constantly. Great foot to pedal traction and smooth strokes from the IXF crankset. That external bearing bottom bracket working well. A lot of this I knew would be as it is, because I know most of the components, but what I didn't know was how overall the new setup would feel, and I gotta say, it's pretty darn good. Not at all like the factory bike, and so good in fact, record time in low gear to the midway bench, and a sneak peek at some of the new trails that are being professionally cut, coming to Wildwood. More on these soon. Look, I'll admit that I had marginal expectations, but it just feels right. And I'm talking more than just the air fork effect, because you know, you add a new air fork to a bike that didn't have one before, especially from a big box fork, and it's such a major change, but this is really starting to put me perfectly where I want to be. Amazing considering the 29-inch wheels, which, you know, I'm a 27.5 guy. I really like how this is shaping up. And that's just my perceptions from the climb. Let's go back down and see if the excitement holds up. Acceleration, check. Falcon Saker to SRAM NX means shifting is now solid and faster. Top speed is faster too. But more important than that is that even with these 2.0 tires, these connection trails bite so much better than the wider cheap tires. I can maintain speeds where before I had to slow down. The smoothness might not relay on camera, but carbon has its advantages, and so does having an air fork and good wheels. The bike is night and day versus what it was from the factory, and now I'm wondering why I didn't upgrade it sooner or use some of the other parts that I had available, which could step this up even more. In short, it's a great trail bike in this configuration, another good project. One, I can't wait to get on the other trails, the new trails, as soon as they open, which will be soon. So I start with a carbon fiber bike that's usable, but with very budget parts, and then I add a few things. Over time, we'll talk money in just a minute, but do that and the bike literally awakens. And this is exactly why I do my project builds. This is what I enjoy doing, and I end up with a bike that I enjoy even more than I did in its factory form. Standouts, obviously the fork, the silicone foam grips, these were all the rage a few years ago, but I'm still a fan. The mountain bike bar width, well, that's here now. Better braking, better shifting, reliable shifting more importantly. It's all good up top. Below that, good too, this fork along with the wheels shedding weight and adding strength, and with the tires, even with the thin connection trails, I would say this is a doubling of traction. I also want to mention the SRAM NX, a lot of people think it's went away. No, it's still available, still an option, now cheaper than ever, under $130 for this group set currently, under $200 for the complete drivetrain that I used, including the pedals. Alright, let's dig deeper. So we know there are 5 original parts on this bike. You've seen all the new stuff that I've put on it, and you've seen the ride. It's better, smoother, faster, grippier, that geometry ties into some of the things you can't see. I criticized this frame originally for the steep 71-degree head tube angle. What were they thinking? But as I've already mentioned, they're now shipping a newer version with 69-degree head tube angle. But as far as this one goes, 71 kept me off the bike. It literally sat in my basement. However, there are two ways to get a head tube angle. There's the proper way, the factory, they set it up that way, but you can also do an effective head tube angle by increasing the fork travel, which kind of tilts things up. Well, I put a 120mm fork on this. When I checked the new head tube angle, the effective head tube angle, it's now 68 degrees. And I can attest to this difference over the factory geometry when I'm on the trail. It is evident quickly, as is the shedding of weight. The total weight of this project build, 27.4 pounds. And I could have shed even more weight, another few ounces, if I went with a new seat post, a new saddle, replaced that stem. Why didn't I? The only real drawback that I couldn't change. The lack of dropper support, which again is one of the perks of the new version of this bike, but on mine, no dropper support. That aside, I'm absolutely thrilled with how this came together and how it rides. As a matter of fact, this is one of my better riding 29ers, at least that I've built. Who knew? Knowing what I know now, if I were doing this all over again, is there anything that I would change? Well, I do have an Eagle group set that would be nice here, but that's going towards something else. Oh, and I would install the correct length brake lines for the internal cable routing. You may have noticed the right brake line, it's a bit tight. I went into this thinking it would be a one and done build, but now I'll be riding this more for sure, so I may have to address that. Now let's talk budgets. The bike is currently $678 at Walmart. A link in the description if you want to take a look. By the way, using my links is a great way to support this channel without costing you anything extra. The total price for the parts I used on this build and the current price of the bike added together puts the cost at $1,455 for this build. If I use some of the better parts that I have available and put wider tires on it, that could push the price up to around $1,700. And when you get up to spending $1,455 or $1,700, some people will say you could get a better bike for that price, or a complete bike for that much. And they're right, but they're not factoring in budgetary realities. As I always point out, my project builds are projects. I can buy a bike and have a bike to ride as is, and over time, in this case 2 years, I buy parts as I can afford and as needed to upgrade as I go. Now, if I had the cash, if I had $1,700, that's an entirely different thing. As a matter of fact, I always tell people, buy the best bike you can afford. But this is KevCentral, I do project builds, so let's just entertain the options that I have here. If I had $1,700, well, option one is exactly what I've done here. Buy an affordable bike and then add parts to it with the money that I have left over and get something maybe the way that I want it, but wasn't initially built to be like that. Or I could try to find something that was $1,700 that had roughly the same specs. The problem is going to be that carbon fiber frame. Mountain bikes with carbon fiber frames, aside from this one, are usually well outside the $1,700 budget, or are they? I told you in this video that this was a setup for something else, because it turns out there is a carbon fiber mountain bike for under $1,700, one penny under, and it's also made by Hyper. It also has a frame very similar to the current version of the Hyper Carbon X29, and it has the bonus of sized frames. Bonus, I have one new in the box. Soon we'll be taking a look at it, and then we can compare it to Project X29, maybe even to some of my other bikes, and see how they stack up, and also if a $1,700 Hyper Carbon bike is worth it, so stay tuned. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you found it entertaining, informative, whatever positive vibe hopefully it gave you. Also, comment with what you think about Project X29 and how excited you are to see the Hyper Mod Carbon bike. Thanks for watching KevCentral. Have a great day.